The next angle, or the next example we want to help you kind of explore and unpack here deals with a unit circle. And this time we have an angle that's marked out of the unit circle. The angle is pi halves, or its radian is pi halves. So given that, we need to remember back and kind of remember what were the coordinate points, or where does pi halves angle lands at. And we know that that pi halves is right here. It's that angle. And so at this point, we need to identify what that point right there is. That's the point on the unit circle that's described by an angle of pi half radians. So this point on the unit circle, since we know it's a radius 1, it's 0 and up 1. So once we know that point, or remember what that point is on the unit circle, we have our x-coordinate and we have our y-coordinate. And from there, it's just plug and play. Sine of t, t is this pi half, so the sine of pi halves sine of pi halves, remember that was its y-coordinate. Its y-coordinate in this particular case is a 1. The cosine of t, or the cosine of pi halves. Cosine of pi halves, at this point, the cosine is its x-coordinate, and its x-coordinate is 0. Tangent, so what's the tangent of pi halves? The tangent of pi halves was my y-coordinate over my x-coordinate. My y-coordinate was a 1, my x-coordinate was a 0. So therefore, the tangent at 90 degrees, or the tangent at pi halves, is undefined. Cosecant. The cosecant was my 1 over a y, and that equaled a 1 over the y-coordinate. It was 1. So the cosecant of pi halves is 1. The secant of pi halves. Well, we can just go and write those pi halves, can't we? The secant of pi halves was a 1 over an x, 1 over the x-coordinate, 1 over a 0. So at pi halves, its secant is also undefined. And the last one is the cotangent. So what's the cotangent? The cotangent of pi halves, if I remember, the cotangent of t of any angle is the x over the y-coordinate. The x-coordinate was a 0, the y-coordinate was a 1. So the cotangent at pi halves, it is defined, but it's defined at that particular angle as being a measure, or being 0. So the cotangent of pi halves is 0.